Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Another race weekend, another massive piece of drama between the two Mercedes drivers. Max Verstappen wins the Grand Prix less than 5 seconds ahead of the two McLarens that started P6 and P10 way down the order, in a car that at times was actually slower than Russell's Mercedes on the same set of tyres. What was possible for Mercedes today had they not collided into the first corner? Hamilton had his say at the time. He's then responded after the fact as well. Massive missed opportunity for Hamilton and Mercedes. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Now, to begin the day, we had all sorts going on here, and if you think the Rosberg curse has finally come to an end, you'll actually notice that Carlos Sainz's garage is in the background. He failed to start the race. But this was the big drama of early in the day, that the FIA were mandating 18 lap stints on these tyres. This is because the tyre is constructed in such a way that at this circuit with the very aggressive curbs, the sidewall of the tyre was breaking down. Doesn't matter what compound the rubber is, the soft wasn't any more vulnerable to this than the medium or the hard. The construction was not strong enough to survive, and Pirelli did not want any of the potential PR implications of tyre blowout as they had here back in 2021. So they said you can only do 18 laps on a set of tyres. That mandate a 3-stop for the race. If you go over that, you're going to be black flagged. They then also came up with a very complicated situation on used tyres, because you had the out lap and the in lap. They took the number 20 laps and then they minus how many other laps you did on it. So a 7-lap old set of tyres you could run for 13 laps in the race. It's an absolute mess, to be honest. This sport is so complicated at times, and I did wonder whether any teams would bottle this. You know, I'm sure Ferrari and Leclerc were somewhat concerned that they might bring him in after 19 laps and get disqualified from the race. This was the cheat sheet, as it were, of the teams that had the better tyre compounds. So the 18 means it's a brand new tyre that you can do 18 laps on. So Hamilton was in an interesting spot. He had one set of new hards, one set of new mediums, and maybe a couple of sets of new softs. The best positioning driver here was probably Verstappen, because he had 3 sets of mediums that he could all run for quite some distance. So this was what the teams were looking at, and it was very interesting to kind of know when the drivers would have to pit, because, you know, it was said on the TV graphics by lap 50, Russell's got to stop. We know it because that's in the rules. So it mandated a 3-stop. Very interesting stuff. In addition to that, there was some big drama about this actually. So Red Bull and Perez, he had the incident on Saturday that kind of ruined his car. They had to change out a lot of things on his car and put a brand new power unit in, and they took a pit lane start here. The controversial part about this though is that this happened to Sargent, you guys remember, 2 weeks ago in Suzuka. They not only had to start from the pit lane, but also because they couldn't fix the car in time within Parc Fermé, they also took a 10-second time penalty. However, somehow Red Bull got around this because they didn't have any more than 2 chassis ready at the same time. So apparently by reading the rules in a certain way, they didn't break the rule. So Perez didn't have an additional 10-second penalty, but he made up for that by getting a fair amount of penalties in the race itself. So it didn't really matter in the end, and the idea that Perez unretired in Suzuka and then re-retired didn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. Then Sainz was out of the race before the race even began. He had a serious fuel leak that apparently was caused by running over the curbs, and that is the controversial part of this track again. Is, well, that's the rumor anyway, that by going, it's an aggressive track on the car, by constantly bouncing over those curbs, the car had sustained an issue that was unable to be fixed before the race began. So yeah, Sainz couldn't even start the Grand Prix, and he was a DNS before the race even began, and I was running well. How many DNFs are we going to get in this race? It was set to be quite a few. This was how they lined up on the grid. So most drivers on mediums. Hamilton started on soft. I was somewhat surprised by this because the soft tyre is very quick to degrade. We saw that in the sprint race, and on absolute maximum fuel, it's not going to last long at all. I thought the play might have been to go medium, medium, maybe medium hard, medium soft. I thought was probably a good strategy. Or you could go medium hard, medium medium if you were Verstappen. And, well, that's pretty much what most teams did on the day. So Hamilton starting on softs seemed strange. And the only reason why I can imagine they would have done this is to say, all right, well, we know how good the softs are off the line, how much grip they have on the first couple of laps. Use that, Hamilton, to get ahead of George, maybe challenge Max, see if we can mix things up there, right? Because if Hamilton manages to get ahead of Max somehow and maybe slows him down, there's a chance the two Mercedes can work together to deliver a really special result. And it's not like Verstappen had insane pace. I'm sure he had pace in the tank, but it's not like he was winning this race by 30 seconds, and there were no safety car interventions for eventually Piastri to end up where he did, less than 5 seconds behind. So that shows there was more in the tank here. So I thought that Mercedes would have probably discussed this plan before the race began, and this is why I was so surprised. Well, to be honest, I wasn't really that surprised. For whatever reason, Russell and Hamilton just love a bit of drama. I mean, they came together on track in Spain, they came in qualifying, they came together on track in qualifying, or nearly did, in Spa, I think, when they nearly came together there. We remember last weekend in Suzuka, it got pretty spicy between them, and now here we are into turn one. So Hamilton doesn't get the best launch on the softs, but still a better launch than the medium runners, and is up in a position to potentially try and go around the outside. And we saw on the day, going around the outside of turn one was the move. That's where the grip was. And, well, Hamilton goes for it here. The issue is Russell's on his inside, and I can't believe Mercedes have allowed this to happen. This is Hamilton's fault as far as I'm concerned, and he admits it, and we'll see that in a second. But surely there was conversations at Mercedes to say, look, if Hamilton gets a good start and he's in position to go for it, George, let him go. We don't want to fight Hamilton. He's going to be faster for the first few laps on those soft tyres. If you're going to put Hamilton behind George on the softs, they've got to know what the situation is, right? They've got to know that if Hamilton's in position, then George has to know to yield and allow Hamilton to go and try and chase Max. I don't understand how, or just put them both on mediums, then you don't have to have this worry, do you? You don't have to worry about Hamilton and Russell colliding turn one because, you know, Hamilton wouldn't feel incentivized to go for the move. So I just think there's fault on Mercedes as well, putting, you know, they could have put George on softs and let him try and go for it on Max. I just think that Mercedes have caused themselves a nightmare here by putting Hamilton on softs from P3, and then you get this situation. So, I mean, this is the impact when we see Hamilton turns in, as Max did at Silverstone 2021, as Hamilton did at Spa 2022, when he collided with Alonso on the inside. And yeah, he comes together with Russell, and Hamilton's wheel comes off, and he's out of the Grand Prix. This was another shot of the instant if he wants to load here. So we can see 3 wide into turn one. Hamilton has way more room on the outside of the track, of course, but he must be expecting Russell to yield. And after the Grand Prix, when they discussed this, we didn't really hear from Hamilton or Russell, at least as of yet, that this was a conversation they had, that Hamilton expected Russell to yield because they discussed it. You know, so why is this happening? And it's the driver's fault in part, Hamilton's fault, as we'll see in a second, but also it's got to be on Mercedes again for allowing this circumstance to occur. This is Russell getting sandwiched, and, you know, look, it's tricky for Russell. He's on a good start, he tries to go around the outside of Max, as he's within his rights to do, but surely Mercedes have had to have the conversation before that Hamilton is probably going to be in exactly the position where he is. And, you know, Russell gets in a position where Hamilton turns in on him, but, you know, maybe they could have just played this one differently. The fact that they had such good pace today in Russell's car, which might have even carried a bit of damage after this contact as well, to be fair, and the fact that they started P2, P3 with Perez nowhere to be found, they had a legitimate chance to win the race today, had situations gone their way, but they blew it right at the start. And I don't know what Hamilton's fine or whatever it's going to be for walking across the track while it was live, but yeah, this was quite the shot, really, as Hamilton walks away with Russell driving around in the background after his pit stop. Russell's immediate response was, sorry guys, wasn't even looking behind, was just focused ahead, and he came from nowhere, which is true. And Hamilton said, after Russell then pitted for the full stop, well, the first stop of 4 in the race, and also got to say, the fact that Russell went from here to P4 and Perez went from the pit lane and at this time ahead of Russell to, I think, P10 or whatever it was. Yeah, you know, I mean, look, Perez was trying his best to take the Donkey of the Day award away from Hamilton, but I think it's got to go to Lewis here, because if they just keep it clean turn one, they'll be fine. And Hamilton's immediate response was, yep, just got taken out by my teammate, which was quite the words. I get it in the heat of the moment, and I'm sure he didn't really fully know what happened here in the circumstances. And I guess technically it's true. He did get taken out by his teammate because, well, he turned in when there was more room. Hamilton then came out afterwards and says, like, I think it's a racing incident. George had nowhere to go. Unfortunate situation. Happy to take responsibility. And he later said that, you know, it's gutting for the team. Take full responsibility. massive apology to everyone at the factory. And this is the thing, Mercedes, a high downforce track like this, they're going to be good. They were good today in the race, and had they been in the position they should have been, it could have been a very different Grand Prix to what we eventually got, with McLaren, again, capitalising massively as the lead Mercedes-powered car, it's got to be said. Hamilton even afterwards comes out on social media and says, watch the replay, 100% my fault, I take full responsibility, apology to the team and to George. And that's the thing, Hamilton today had a prime chance to capitalise in the Drivers' Championship, and Mercedes had a prime chance to really stamp their authority on the Constructors' Championship. Both of those opportunities have now gone astray. So yeah, it's a really tricky one to diagnose this from the Mercedes side, and I guess Hamilton just really, I mean, he might have even made this move stick. He probably would have had the grip on those softs around the outside. It was a very optimistic move from Hamilton. It probably didn't need to be done, but maybe Hamilton thought, you know what, if I can get ahead of Max here, we've actually got a chance. But if that was the thought process, then surely conversations before the race should have been had to what they should have done as a result. So again, I mean, I can't believe how many times these Mercedes boys come together. It happens all the time. And you can see why at the end of the Grand Prix, McLaren were telling their boys, look guys, just keep it clean. Don't even try and do anything, because we don't want an incident that Mercedes have had. And this is the thing where people will say, well, you know, how about Bottas? If Bottas was in the car, they wouldn't have this situation again. Putting Russell here means these type of situations develop, and the fact that they're colliding like this when they don't even have a championship caliber car really does make me wonder what could and maybe will happen as and when they do. People also were comparing this to the Silverstone 2021 when it was Hamilton in Russell's position and Verstappen in Hamilton's position, but you know, in that circumstance there wasn't another car on the inside, so different instance as far as I'm concerned, but still a very tricky one. So the race gets underway, and to be honest, it was more of a procession than I was hoping it would be, because 3 stops, you're expecting a bit more drama. The fact of the matter is, Verstappen had so many laps he could do on those mediums that he was just able to, you know, just do lap after lap really on those tyres, and it was pitting last of everyone, so nothing really changed. But you could tell from quite early on that there was definitely pace in the McLaren here. Russell had made some progress, Perez was struggling to make progress on the hards, and Albon briefly led this race as well. I'm not even sure he led a full lap though, because he led after Verstappen pitted, then he pitted himself, and I reckon that Verstappen was leading coming up to the timing lines. That might not have been the case though. Actually, the line they're considering is probably here, so I think he would have been leading just about 1 lap of this Grand Prix. But yeah, Verstappen was away and gone. The thing is, he wasn't actually away and gone by a mile, but the other Red Bull in Perez was in prime position. Look at this, right? So Perez, Russell, they've made up progress. It's looking pretty good for Perez at this point. All you've got to do is keep it in the white lines. But Perez seemingly can't do it, and he was picking up penalty after penalty after penalty that they were serving at pit stops, and a 5-second pit stop penalty is really like a 6 seconds, because it just takes a bit longer to actually complete the stop once they've had to wait for a while. And talking of stops, I gotta say, there were very few howlers today, and Norris from McLaren, well, McLaren really on Norris, had the best pit stops of the year. I don't know what they're drinking over there at McLaren, but their pit stops were 2.1, 2.0, 2.0, and we've only had like 1 pit stop under 2 seconds since the change of the rules to change the automatic lighting thing. And that was with Red Bull. McLaren have now done a 1.8, which is absolutely absurd. And honestly, operationally, McLaren are showing Mercedes how it's done. They don't let their drivers get into too much drama. They actually have good pit stops that Mercedes really don't. I mean, Mercedes average like 3 seconds, McLaren average 2 seconds, which over a 3-stop race is a pretty big deal when you're pitting and gaining a second every single stop in terms of race time. And they've got the better car right now. So it truly is quite incredible. Perez went off the track again. We also had this incident where Alonso went off the track, and I'm not sure that he joined fully safely again, but I guess they're looking into it. And Perez, I mean, yeah, it's just tough for this guy, isn't it? Like, he's getting calls from his engineer that's saying another 5-second penalty, Checo, this is hurting our race big time. And he had obviously way more pace. The other guy I feel bad for on the day was Logan Sargeant, but, you know, because he was feeling really unwell. The conditions were so hot. Like, we saw the drivers opening up their visor on the straight. Russell had his hands off the wheel. Really physical Grand Prix here that was taking its toll massively on the drivers. And Sargeant to such an extent that he tried to continue, and then he eventually decided that he just needed to stop, and he wasn't going to get points anyway, so it didn't massively matter, and he's all okay, so that's good. But he felt like he was going to throw up, and it was just awful race conditions for him, but not a great sign for his future in Formula 1, because it's not like the Qatar Grand Prix is going anywhere. this was also a bad sign for Perez. He got lapped by Verstappen. I mean, I guess it was coming, but still, on the weekend where he was the only driver, Perez, that came into this weekend still with a potential chance to win the World Championship, although, of course, there was no realistic chance, and to get lapped by your teammate on the weekends is not a good sign. There were some interesting battles towards the ends, and I thought this was entertaining between the two McLarens because, as Norris says, I'm clearly way quicker than Piastri. Like, let me go. But they said no, hold position, and in fairness, Piastri then did respond with extra pace. And this guy's really impressive, right? To out-qualify Norris in the qualification stage, to beat him to his win in the sprints, and to then outplace him in the Grand Prix. Incredibly impressive. There was also an interesting battle at the end here where Perez tried his best. These guys were all going off the track, all collecting so many penalties between Gasly, Stroll and Perez. And yeah, that's how it ended up with the Grand Prix finishing like this. And you've got to say, coming back to the Mercedes points, what a massive opportunity missed. I know that Russell for some reason had no pace in the softs at the ends, but still, Piastri only 4.8 behind Max, and I'm sure that there was some serious management going on there from Max's side, and he said that their strategy maybe wasn't the best in terms of optimal delta, but they wanted to protect against safety cars at the end of the Grand Prix, stuff like this. But still, McLaren of Piastri started P6, and with no safety car intervention, finished 5 seconds behind Max, which is incredibly promising for that McLaren car and their concept and what they might achieve next year going forwards, but also shows Mercedes and Russell had at times very similar pace to Piastri and Norris, if not slightly better at times on the same compounded tyres. And then you've got to think that generally Hamilton's had at least a tenth or couple of tenths in hand on Russell in race pace. Got to wonder what could have been possible for Mercedes today had they not blown it up in the first corner. So Toto will be fuming, and for good reason about this. Final race results then look like this, because Perez, after getting another 5-second penalty, dropped behind Joe, so only 1 point for him. So yeah, he saw Hamilton go out and decided, all right, Lewis, I won't extend the gap in the Drivers' Championship by all that much. So incredibly impressive stuff again. I mean, easy drive for Verstappen, but from Piastri especially, from Norris making it the way through, McLaren, what a team they are turning into at the moment. But yeah, somehow again, after all this chaos, Mercedes are the story of the day. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.